so we start the top with Julian Assange. Now, he has been fighting his extradition to the United States for years now, and in recent months, he continues to be denied his appeal to be extradited. In fact, the United States says that they want to try him for war crimes because he published classified documents. Well, now the latest update is that a judge has said that he can be extradited. This is not his last hope, but it's really ticking down to the end of his options at this point. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's really awful. I mean, this is really, really awful for free speech. The unthinkable, I mean, just happened in the Julian Assange case, something that like freedom-loving Americans should actually be terrified of. I mean, a court has formally approved the extradition of Julian Assange to the United States on espionage charges. And I mean, think about this. Here's a guy who is a journalist who gets documents that reveals what has been unfolding in the United States government, spying on American citizens.
Yes.
I mean, think about what we learned because
in fact, killing people in war-torn areas, right? It's not just about privacy concerns any longer. These are about crimes, right? War crimes abroad. And now the United States wants to try him for it, which is interesting, right? Because while the United States is championing for Ukraine, saying Vladimir Putin should be tried for war crimes, that's very interesting when it will not answer for any crimes that the United States government has in fact enacted, but wants to punish the person who has spoken most publicly about it.
Right.
Well, and one thing I think that's important is the fact that this guy, you know, anybody who believes that he is a traitor to the United States bought into propaganda, because this guy has never had to retract one single ounce of information that he's put out. He is very careful with what they drop, that it is actual information.
Well, also, he's not a U.S. citizen. You cannot betray a country you are not a part of, which is just like weird to me. That's the thing that's always, I can't wrap my head around this, is like he's not a U.S. citizen.
He has no social contract with the United States, right?
But it doesn't matter. And one of the reasons, you know, he'll be tried here, he'll be brought to the United States. And this was, you remember the UK judge, by the way, the UK judge who specifically had a problem with him going to United States prison, right? Because of the terrible
living conditions.
The terrible living conditions. I mean, his family's already spoken out about how, I mean, it's just absolutely crushed and demoralized him.
Yes.
You know, and really the shitty thing here, too, is that President Trump had an opportunity. He had an absolute opportunity to pardon him, to pardon Edward Snowden, and he didn't. I mean, if you really wanted to stick it to the military-industrial complex, if you really wanted to stick it to the deep state, to the CIA, et cetera,
well, and talk about
this is the way to do it.
Pulling people that otherwise would be polarized to Trump, he could have pulled people over to his side with that one move.
Yes, you're right. This would have really endeared people to him. Now, he still can appeal the decision, and it now rests in the UK Home Secretary Priti Patel. But his lawyer says, obviously, this is concerning. But his team is saying that they may appeal because they have what they're calling fresh developments in the case. We have no idea what that could be. We don't know if we will ever know, but you can bet that the powers that be in Washington are shaking in their boots because they don't want any fresh news out of Julian Assange. No fresh news, please. They want this to be the end of what he had to show.
Caitlin Johnstone wrote a great piece on this today. She's, of course, been tracking and following what's been going on with the Julian Assange case. She says the U.S. cries about war crimes while imprisoning a journalist for exposing its war crimes. I mean, that headline sums it up, doesn't it? I'm going to read it again for those listening. The U.S. cries about war crimes while imprisoning a journalist who exposed the war crimes, right? And so she goes on to say, in what his lawyers have described as a brief but significant moment in the case, a British magistrate court has signed off on Julian Assange's extradition to the United States, bringing the WikiLeaks founder one step closer to U.S. trial under the Espionage Act, which threatens press freedoms worldwide. This is happening, as she says, at the same time the United States and the United Kingdom are loudly demanding accountability for alleged war crimes by the Russian military in Ukraine, which is interesting because attempting to bring accountability for war crimes is precisely why Julian Assange is in prison.
Yes.
Well, and think about this for 1 second, too. Think about Edward Snowden. So President Biden made it his personal beef with Snowden to make sure that he caught him, right? But who gave him refuge? Russia. So he is in Russia getting more protection than he'd get in the United States, which is insane.
But the thing is, the argument can be made, and like, I don't want to get a bunch of hate for this because I'm not saying I agree with it, but the argument can be made that Snowden was a traitor because he was actually a soldier. He was a contractor for the United States
NSA.
government. He is a citizen, so that argument can be made. But Julian Assange is not.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a great point. I mean, and as our chat is pointing out, Philip, great point. And I'll say great point.
It is a great point, but I kind of can't. Like, I feel like I need to say the obvious thing is that also he's a human being who felt like personal freedoms and civil liberties were being violated. And so he acted as a human being first and a soldier second. And I think that sort of talking about these man-made boundaries and these man-made governments and these man-made orders and taking the humanity out of this is what's causing war and death and destruction in this moment. So I get it, where we can talk about this traitorous moment, but at the same time, you know, I want to speak out on behalf of what Edward Snowden did as a human person with a conscience.
Yeah, and by the way, if you've never seen the great movie, the Snowden movie, I highly encourage you to watch it. It's really, really good.
The one with
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Yeah,
really,
it
really
is
good.
very
So good.
But back to Julian Assange, just for some context here to provide like why he's in prison, right? As this points out, 12 years ago today, Julian Assange published the Collateral Murder video detailing the gunning down of civilians, children, and 2 Reuters journalists. Assange faces a 175-year sentence if extradited for revealing this and other war crimes. I mean, you know, this is, and they lied to us. The United States lied to its citizens about what happened. Reuters, of course, demanded investigation into the killings. U.S. military authorities basically, lied to the United States. The President of the United States lied to the American people. The only reason we even knew about it was through a Freedom of Information Act request. And then, of course, WikiLeaks got and obtained decrypted and got the video. And this is what, of course, and we can show some of it here, this is what happened. And, I'm not going to show the full thing here, but this is what happened. This was the original video that the United States military, as these individuals get gunned down here. And I'm going to cut away from that because we know what happened. I'm sure you've all seen this horrible video over the years. But by revealing this and these crimes, that's why he's going to face time in prison.
And I was just going to say really quick, in those videos, you can hear soldiers laughing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've watched these videos. And think about sort of the early days of the internet getting access to this, right? Like revealing this stuff. It just got to show you like, all right, we just engaged all 8 individuals. Yeah, you see 2 birds? We're still on fire. Roger, I got him. We're good to go. I got these guys. Yep, I'm sorry. What's going on? Yeah, man, all right. I hit him. These are the subtitles.
This is not a video game.
No,
this is real life.
This is what he exposed. This is what he exposed, and now he's going to be extradited for this. The hypocrisy. It's one of those days, guys.
But then also in a time when we see that the United States is making claims about a conflict between Russia and Ukraine, has very few sort of credible sources, but is only telling us that everything Russian says is a lie, only believe what we want you to believe. And this journalist over here who told you things we didn't want you to see will be punished. So then what is the future of the information that we can access when people who say things that the powers that be don't like will be punished, right? What is the trickle-down effect for news? News, I want to say, like with an asterisk, right? But for information disseminators,
yes.
People who just want to expose things, not necessarily news media. I feel like I'm giving the news media a bit too much credit by linking them in this group of.
Well, politicians, news media, everything. And I come back to Caitlin Johnstone, who's one of the few voices in this. The reason I love her so much, I have a wife who's sitting next to me, but Caitlin Johnstone is an amazing thinker in this space and one of the few voices. And there's so few voices out there.
You have a professional crush on her. That's okay.
I do have a professional crush on her because she's amazing. And I think what she says what so many people don't have the balls to say. And here she says it in this piece, and she's responding.
Can we use the word vulva?
Okay, you can say vol. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Vulva.
don't say balls.
Anyway, Nikki Haley, of course, tweets, this isn't just a war for Ukraine. This is a war for freedom. Are people not tired of having their intelligence insulted like this? Caitlin writes. And then she writes in the piece, I mean, the gall, the absolute temerity, she says. The balls on this empire, man.
Okay, she says balls.
She says it. I love this sentence. I mean, the gall, the absolute temerity, the balls on this empire, man. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Assange exposed many ugly realities about the powerful in his work with WikiLeaks. But everything that he has managed to expose thereafter, simply by forcing them to prosecute him, far surpasses the revelations in those publications. If the highest form of journalism is exposing the darkest secrets of the most powerful people in the world, then Julian Assange is the highest form of journalist. I just got chills reading that. Like, it's one of those things where you want to cry, actually.
Yes.
I mean, we should all be outraged about this. I mean, here's a guy who exposed these war crimes. He didn't go in and physically steal files. He, as a journalist, exposed this to the world, right?
Yes.
So we could see what these people were doing. And he is going to face 175 years in jail because the United States bowl of steeping pile of hypocritical shit is sentencing him, is going to sentence him.
Well, the United States will go as far as not participating in the International Crime Court in The Hague. And in fact, recently, when it was accused of certain unsavory things, then at the time in 2020, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo went to put sanctions on members of the International Criminal Court because the United States absolutely will not be held accountable for things that it has done.
Right. Yeah, so the very criminal court that we're saying, hey, let's try Putin for war crimes, we have sanctions against because we were worried about having our own people tried for war crimes.
Yes.
David, go ahead, David.
Well, I was just going to say that's literally a journalist's job. What he did is literally what every journalist is supposed to do.
Yes.
Right.
And is supposed to be protected for.
Right.
What they're
Right.
not supposed to do is when they get damning information on somebody, go to that person and ask them if it's okay if they publish that. They verify the source and then they publish it. You don't need to go to the person who has, say,
No,
hey, I've got
you're
damning
not
information
supposed
on
to.
you. Yeah.
That's J School 101.
And by the way, that's what the New York Times has done. The New York Times has been exposed for doing the very same thing, which is, here's a story we're working on. We're going to send it to you before we publish it. Is this okay? Is this okay? The Washington Post, the same thing.
And I think they're so pissed off because they couldn't hide it anymore. They had been hiding this all along. And finally, now we know. And it's like egg on their face. Like, whoops, we've been doing these war crimes and now people know.
Well, it's hard to sort of extrapolate what will happen in the end because he seems to be fighting with every tooth and nail that's available to him in the legal system in the United Kingdom. If he is in fact extradited, the same thing will happen, right? And we will see. I mean, I am sort of interested in how it would go if he did have to fight here because the case would be public and so would any discovery, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think the United States really wants to do this, which is why you can make the argument that they want him to bring him to justice, but he will get harmed before he has his day in court.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to hear what comes out of this discovery and go through the trial. Like, can you imagine this trial? I think this, we talk about like O.J. Simpson, the trial of the century. Fuck that guy. Who cares? Anyway, give me a break. No, to me, this would be the trial of the century.
Well, I don't think they'd let us see it. I honestly don't think they'd let us see it because they would have no point. Their points would fall apart.
Right.
Well, is there somewhere like publicly that you can actually read the charges against him? Do you know? I mean, like,
good question.
I'm gonna
on the Espionage Act, I don't know. I mean,
I'd be interested to see like one, what those charges are, and two, like in the extradition, what guarantee is it that he will be extradited to the continental United States and not some like island nearby where we happen to have a super secret prison? Exactly.
Right.
Yes. Well, the United States has recently given assurances that they'll take extra good care of him, right? So you can take that to the bank.
Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Wait.
We've got cameras on him. We've got cameras on him. We've got guards walking.
Yeah,
Well,
we
that's-
have cameras that turn off conveniently. We have the best cameras at our prisons. So when we, if there's some unsavory guards, some CIA agents that happen to be floating around at some particular time, the cameras may turn off. We're just, but that's a feature, not a bug of the American prison system cameras.